everybody. Happy Sunday. I hope y'all are having a good wind down time to your weekend. I have some stuff I'll probably tell y'all at some point. I just don't think I'm emotionally ready. But anyway, I've been watching or watched the first two episodes of the series Dear Mama on Hulu. First of all, I'll be the first one to tell you I do not keep a Hulu account. I only got it for this. Um I think there's just too much happening on Hulu. It confuses me. I don't understand its purpose. I need stuff with more clear. I have Netflix, I have Sling, and then I only got Disney Plus. That was just to watch Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur because y'all know I'm in the black um, animation and stuff. Anyway, dear Mama. Okay, so there is one thing you need to know about me is that I am a Beyonce fan. I love Beyonce. I love Beyonce. I love Beyonce. The other thing you need to know about me is I will stand 10 toes down when I tell you that the greatest rapper of all time is Tupac. I don't think it's up for debate. I don't want to hear Tupac followed by and Biggie. I don't want to hear Tupac and Jay-Z. I don't want to hear none of that bullshit. Fuck that shit, okay? I think Tupac is one of the most brilliant rappers, one of the most brilliant people that ever lived. And he died at 25, a few months after his 25th birthday. The difference between me at 25 and now me at 35, and that's how you know white supremacy is real. No, I don't think it was no East Coast, West Coast beef. No, I don't. I think Tupac was cornered by the government. And this series didn't do nothing but confirm what I already thought. So anytime something comes on with Tupac, for the most part, unless they're talking about his death and all the conspiracies, I love it. I still listen to Tupac's music regularly because I just think he's so brilliant. He had his finger on so many things. And I'm not saying that Tupac wasn't a complex person in the way he treated women, because we all know that there are plenty of rappers that have disrespected women, so on and so forth, in their lyrics or in their actual behavior. And that's why I bring up his age, because there has to be some level of growth and maturity, okay? I want that to be clear. That being said, Tupac is still the greatest motherfucking rapper of all time. But I learned some stuff that I didn't know before, and I like the way the series was done because we have a lot of the recordings of Tupac, and I think one of the most famous ones we've seen bits and pieces of, or you've watched when he was at his high school in California, the Performing Arts School, and they're interviewing him. And you also get these voiceovers from Afeni Shakur about her son, her life, so on and so forth. And I think it's so well done so far, and I can't imagine it would get worse. I hope it doesn't. So it's directed by Allen Hughes. Now, I knew the name Allen Hughes kind of because remember when Tupac was all up in the camera talking about, I whooped the Hughes brothers' ass, this, that, and the other, because he had been working with them so closely, especially just with the movie Menace to Society. They said they needed a big name. They were going to use Tupac. And Allen Hughes, this part comes at the end of the second episode, but I need the Allen Hughes part to be out of the way, because the Hughes brothers did a lot of directing. And they're asking Snoop about it, and they bring it up. They bring up the incident, even though Allen Hughes is directing it like his brother is around. And him and Snoop are talking, and Allen Hughes is behind the camera. And Allen Hughes goes, for the record, that nigga didn't whoop my ass. He had 10 other motherfuckers whoop my ass. And he talking about he whooped my ass. He ain't never whooped my ass. and you have Snoop. I think there's something beautiful about getting older and even realizing when things have grown out of control, and then you just get older and you realize, damn, it wasn't even that deep. We shouldn't have let it go this far. And you can laugh about it. I think that's where the blessing in getting older is. But anyway, so he said, and I still decided to do this. He said, I was hesitant because we had left off on bad terms. He said, but other than that 5 minutes where people was kicking my ass, up until that point, me and Pac had always had a great relationship. But anyway, I thought that was cute. So the first episode already caught my attention. So, I'm a historian. And when I say I'm a historian, I'm not just talking about, I'm somebody who reads history books, and I damn sure don't be sitting around listening to hoteps and shit. No, I read. Okay, I have a BA in history, a master's in history, and a PhD in history. Okay, okay. Um, and I did it on 20th century social and political movements, so on and so forth. So when I saw Panther Power, and they're talking about 17-year-old Tupac, they start out talking about his education. He's being interviewed, and he was like, "Yeah, I love my mother. My mother taught me so much. My mother was a Black Panther. And the thing is, he wrote a lot of poetry. His teachers were really impressed with him, but he also had to work. Because at the point in which he had come out to California performing art school, he didn't really have a choice. His mother was, just victim to the crack epidemic. And people know, or if you don't know, when you're addicted to anything, but specifically things like crack and cocaine, heroin, any of that stuff owns you. You don't own it. And it has detrimental effects on your family, and Tupac was no different. But Tupac, you could tell, still admired his mother. And I think his admiration for his mother and his anger towards his mother for falling victim to that is where we also see that tension in his music, where he can go from Brenda's Got a Baby to Keep Your Head Up to Dear Mama, and then talking about Lauryn Hill being ugly, the bitch in the Fuji. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. Talking shit about Lil' Kim and I'm a fuck fake. That kind of shit. Like, I feel like that is representative of where that comes from, because it starts with the mother. But I remember, always reading about the Panther 21, because that was one of the chapters of the Black Panther Party in New York. And his mother was a huge part of that. I didn't know that. And she was in a relationship with a guy named Afeni Shakur. And I don't think Mutulu was Tupac's father. I think she had taken on the name Shakur because they had really admired this guy Mutulu and his father. And they were really working for the liberation of Black people. His mother and his aunt, who does a lot of the interviewing for the family, his Aunt Glow or whatever, they came from North Carolina. They were part of the, Southern movement, and their father was an alcoholic and abusive. The mother went to New York in the Bronx, got work, and then sent for them. And Aunt Glow talked about how Afeni and her were, teased for being really dark, not being pretty, not having long hair. And she said, the hurtful part about that was, she was like, it's in New York, but this is like the 50s. She was like, so we were in segregated schools. It wasn't white people telling us this. This is other Black people. And she said, I was kind of the type, I could just focus this, that, and the other. And she said Afeni was always one of those people. She just could not just let you do anything to her. She would lean into it and stand up for what is right. And she was like, and Tupac was just like her. She said it was clear he was her son. So even despite all that teasing and that kind of thing, she was still searching for a love of oneself and for what's right for Black people. And she gets involved in the Black Panther Party. Anybody knows anything about the Black Panther Party knows that the majority of its members were women. That's not who's in the pictures. That's not always who's in the interview, so on and so forth. But they carried the party. Well, anyway, the Panther 21 goes on trial. This is all part of the Cointelpro, which is the acronym for the counterintelligence program, where basically J. Edgar Hoover, who was over the FBI, had created a scenario, and this is written down, this is actual government documents, that what they were trying to prevent was a new Black Messiah, because actually Black people have been making too much progress. Martin Luther King was on that list, at the top of that list. Stokely Carmichael was at the top of that list. H. Rap Brown, Elijah Muhammad. And a lot of those people, so what they started doing was they started creating, this is before the internet or people having direct contact. So you might have somebody in the US organization, which actually stood for us. Like, we stand for Black people in the US organization. And you have people in the Black Panther Party, or you have somebody from SNCC, or somebody, from another Black power sort of organization. They'd write a letter and be like, we're going to screw over y'all. We know y'all exploiting the Black community. And talking in language that would seem like a Black person from that organization would have written it. And the next thing you know, they're infighting. They're infiltrating. This is where they were paying black people who had gotten arrested for crimes and petty crimes. Um, and the way they would get off would be to work for the FBI for 6 months to a year. And what they would do is they would basically infiltrate, just kind of like how you saw. That's what the name of the movie was, Black Messiah, even though it wasn't about Fred Hampton. It was about uh, Mike O'Neill, the snitch. It wasn't about the actual revolutionary. But anyway, the Panther 21 ended up being a big trial. And I had no idea that Afeni Shakur was one of the main defendants. And not only was she a main defendant, she defended herself in front of a judge, knowing the Constitution, the clarity behind her words, how she was like, and they talked to somebody who was supposed to be one of the attorneys at one point, and she said, "I think you mean well." When the public defender or lawyers, she was just like, "I think you mean well. I'm sure you're trying to do it, but this is my life." And the fact that she fought for her life in that way, to me, just said, this is the. I don't think kids automatically become like their parents in certain ways, or maybe they do, but I think there's something to people who plant seeds in their kids and show by example, right? So here's somebody on trial fighting for herself who had been caught by the police for being part of the Black Panther Party, okay? Caught by the police. And even Tupac told the story. He was like, they put gasoline around the front of her door, told her she had to come out, lit a fire. She's pregnant with me. Walks out, they hold a gun to her stomach and tell her she has to go to jail. Now, let me tell you something. That either means you cursed or God is with you. And he got plans for you. And it was clear he had plans for her and Tupac. And it's her courage, her training him, her making him read. The way he was talking when he was 17, it was incredible. You could tell he had been exposed to people like Karl Marx, Mao Zedong. Tupac Amaru, who he's named after, who fought for revolution, fought for the indigenous people's freedom and rights against the Spanish conquistadors. And her giving him that name, she said she wanted him to know that it wasn't just us that this happened to, but this was global. And the Black Panthers were really strong about that this is a global freedom struggle. And not as a way of being non-Black, but that people were fighting to be decolonized all across the world, whether it was Cuba, whether it was Angola, whether it was Mozambique, whether it was Ghana, who was the first African nation to shake off the yoke of European colonialism, whether it was Vietnam. Like, that's what she was trying to teach him. And he's 17 years old, back to him being in high school, and they're interviewing him, asking him what he likes. He was like, yeah, it's cool here. He was like, but it is what it is. He was like, I still work 40 hours a week. He was like, I work 40 hours a week. He said, isn't that what a normal person works? Like a grown person? He was like, yeah, and I'm still poor. How you explain that? He was like, my mama works. My mama got a drug problem. He said, and we still poor. He said, and you want to know what the issue is? He was like, we're poor. We work hard, but we have ideals. Like, we believe in stuff. He said, and that's why we poor. And I was like, that reminds me a lot of the way I grew up. I grew up a preacher's child, not a fake one. And when I say not a fake one, I know a lot of people claim to be a preacher and stuff now. My father was a pastor before I was born, preacher before I was born, still is. And I remember just overhearing conversations with the deacons talking to my father, saying, well, look, we need to get the money up in the church, this, that, and the other. And my father said, I don't preach about money. I don't like to preach about money. And even me as a kid, sometimes there were plenty of things we went without having. So I think that's why I always get kind of up in my shoulders. Because it is an emotional reaction for me when I hear about, the preacher's stealing and he's doing this. And I know that some of them do. My father wasn't a pastor of a mega church. He was a pastor, though. And my mother was a wonderful woman. They're not married anymore, but like, my mother is still to this day a devoted Christian. And the things that she taught us, like, we didn't have much, But whatever we had, the minute it wasn't useful, you give it to somebody. And that's where I get that from. Even if I barely have it, I'll give it. And you don't go around bragging when you do good things for people. And my mother would explain that's in the Bible. You don't do that. You do it because it's the right thing to do. It's the kind thing to do. And we never had a lot. Sometimes I'll be like, well, why the hell are we always giving other people stuff? Damn, can something happen good for us? And the thing is, though, there are times still when I think about that, like, my father could have made so much more money if he would have just gone on more revivals. And hell, my mother, if she would have, never mind, I'm not going to say it, but never, I was going to say maybe if she had married a little differently. But, no, I just mean they had principles. And one of the things they talked about in this documentary with his cousins and stuff like that were that he, our system of capitalism doesn't value principles and ideals. What it values is greed and the race to the top. The smartest people aren't in charge of this country. The smartest people are some of the most narcissistic and manipulative people, willing to do anything for power and money. And to me, his mother was such a powerful example of what she was teaching him and trying to be. And, we know she's not the only person that got addicted to crack cocaine in the Black Panther Party. Hell, the head of the party, Huey Newton. There were a lot of people who got addicted, and a lot of it has to do with that post-traumatic stress disorder. You have the government after you, people are shooting up, all this other stuff. And one of the things that we have to remember about the Black Panther Party, and people have to know, because I don't think a lot of people know, because you always see these like militants and this, that, and the other, and that was part of their outfit. But the Black Panthers, what they essentially were Black socialists, and they would say that. So what they believed was that the government has a responsibility to the people, especially Black people who pay taxes, who have in many ways been double taxed and undercut through segregation, through the creation of ghettos and neighborhoods where they can't grow, so on and so forth. And they need to redistribute the wealth. Bragging about being the richest country in the world while people live in poverty is unacceptable. And so the Black Panthers would do stuff like, I'm sure you've heard of the Free Breakfast Program, which Adam Clayton Powell Jr., shout out to him, who was over the head of the Education and Labor Committee, especially throughout the 60s. He helped make that a national program to ensure, and Black man, former pastor at Afeni Shakur Baptist Church in Harlem, and helped make that a program that we have now. I mean, and don't get me wrong, things like that are underfunded. Things like Head Start that we have now. Adam Clayton Powell worked with the Black Panther Party. When you go and look at their 10-point plan, and you can Google it, it's so accessible and readable. They were like, we want education for our kids that teaches our history. Nothing they were asking in that plan, nothing they were asking really sounds different from the issues today. Nothing they were asking was unreasonable, except for the fact that every Black person be kicked out of jail because they've been put in there under wrong circumstances. And for the most part, they were probably right, but some people may have been not. But anyway, but y'all get my point. And so I just thought it was so powerful the way you saw this converge. And Tupac, they said him and his cousin, they tried to sell crack really to make money. And they were like, we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. They were like, we were the worst crack dealers ever. We were only crack dealers for 5 days. We couldn't sell nothing. We didn't even know. We felt bad trying to force that stuff on people. So he was like, Pac was like one of those people who was into poetry. He said the thing about him was, like, he was really tough. Like, he loved hard when he loved, and when he was angry with you. He said, but he was just always so passionate. He said, and he could be very tough and just extremely vulnerable. And he said, and I was like, yeah, because his music is like that. There are so many Tupac songs that I listen to and I will rock over and over again. And I'll be sitting in my bed just crying because that shit hits. And Dear Mama is one of them. Changes is another one. And now that I've gotten older, I appreciate Brenda's Got a Baby in a totally different way. Because I was thinking to myself, these are things that are just coming into the public consciousness about young girls being raped, having babies, being scared, I don't know what to do. There's a book called Arrested Justice by Beth Ritchie, a Black woman who's done the research and things like that. But the fact that Tupac could watch that, see that, and still hold compassion and analyze that situation and still make hits. And Allen Hughes did that video, and I was just like, this is incredible. Like, it's incredible the way they're merging history and his relationship with his mother. And I was just so happy to finally see it part of a Tupac series where it's not constantly about the East Coast, West Coast shit. It's not constantly. We're actually really seeing and hearing his mother's voice, telling her story, what she stood for. And when they finally get to Dear Mama as the song, because there's two episodes. One is called Panther Power, which I encourage y'all to watch, and changes it into episode 2. And I was like, okay, it's going to be a weekly thing or whatever. And she was saying that Dear Mama was the song, because that song always makes me cry anyway. And his former manager, one was a black woman, his publicist was really one of his teachers. He said she was white. He said, but she was cool. She got it. And she was like, if he would not have gotten a record deal, she said he wasn't even, he was like, if it works out fine, if it doesn't, I'm going to go and start the new Panthers, the new African Panthers, something like that party. And he was visiting schools and teaching them about the Black Panthers, what his mother had been through, why kids need to get their education. They actually have tapes of this. And I'm just so blown by his brilliance. And I wonder if sometimes when you're that brilliant, that smart and that early, we already know. I mean, even his mother was like, this is a country that, and I would say all countries by and large, power structures, that is very hostile to radicals. She said, and I trained him that way to stand for that. But somebody to be that smart, that educated, that well read, never gone to college, and is able to do that, all I can think is that has to mean fear for white people. And the people who trash his music for the cursing, calling him a gangster rapper, this, that, and the other, all the shit they trash, and they got the nerve to be teaching his shit at Harvard. You want to know why? It's like my father used to say, it's easy. Now, I didn't necessarily hear him refer to Tupac like this, but it's always easy to celebrate a prophet after they're dead. Because then you can control their image. You can control what people know about them. And so he understood that, but he kept fighting. And he was one of those people who was, upping people about, black history and standing up for his people. And he was like, I believe in black people. And it wasn't that he wasn't critical of black people hurting each other and that kind of thing. And they start, at the end of episode 2, started talking about, he had a black woman who was his manager. And she said he insisted that his mother be his PR person. That once she was at a rehab, he said, I want her here. I want her a part of everything. And he was proud of her, whatever. And the manager was like, the black woman goes, what does your mother know about PR? He said, it doesn't matter. I want her in charge of my public image because she knows. And people sometimes go, well, black people don't hire the right people. No. Because nobody knows how to represent their son better than a mother who loves them. And they said when she heard Dear Mama, and it was crazy because even the people they were interviewing were like welling up in tears. People she had been a Black Panther party with. And you could tell. That's how you know how many of the Panthers were young. Because even now, they're just like getting to their older ages. Like, 60s, late 60s and stuff. And they had the voiceover. And she was like, when I heard that song, she said, I lost all composure. Because when I heard it, I knew my son had forgiven me. She said, because I had failed him by being on drugs. I know that was hard for him. I know that was hard for his sister. She said, but I felt forgiven. And even her sister was like, yeah, that meant so much to her. And to have an opportunity to reconcile that relationship with your son and a son to his mother through a song that lived on way after him, I think is so powerful. And, the spoken word in Western culture, they try to devalue it. West Africans, pass down stories, so on and so forth. Indigenous people, they preserve their history, oftentimes through oral history. And people go, well, people can forget and tell stuff wrong. I was like, people write things down and lie all the time. That's what I teach my students. But anyway, I am enjoying it. I really think y'all should watch it. Because I want to support this. I'm enjoying it. But anyway, I'll talk to y'all soon. Drop down in the comments. Let me know what you think. Are you Jay-Z people? Let me tell you something. Okay, y'all can talk about you the best lyricist ever. Let me tell you something. I'm ready, honey. I'm ready. I'm just playing, but I am ready. But I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.